Thank you, Anthony. Pleasure to be here and to present Pacertool to you today. We are developing a platform for precision pacing. So this is patient-specific selection for heart failure. Those of you that have been around, there are different approaches to heart failure. One of them are biventricular pacemakers. It's been around from the mid-90s. Very successful technology and works in the majority of the patients, but it doesn't work in roughly 50% of the patients. So 50% of the patients will have a good response, 25% will have a worsening of their heart function, and 25% will have a no change in the heart function. And that's what we want to change. If you look at this is a little bit complex picture, but today there are around 200,000 patients that are going untreated. In the class 1 indicated patients, they have a very good response rate, around 70% response rate, and this converts to a good outcome in these patients. However, in the class 2 indicated patients, only 30% of the patients are being treated today, and 70% of the patients are going untreated. And the major reason for that is that the electrophysiologists don't know if the patients will get a response or not. So we believe that this market potentially can grow from the current 200,000 patients to 400,000 patients worldwide. The system that we're developing consists of 3 major components. It's a quite advanced 6 French 2mm catheter with an electronic or optical pressure sensor and 5 electrodes basically working like mimicking a pacemaker. This is a catheter that goes into the left ventricle, sits in the mid portion of the left ventricle. It's connected to a signal amplifier that is processing the data and can send signals back and forth from the catheter. And that's connected to a mainframe with a software and a secret sauce to measure this electromechanical biomarker. And it's an electromechanical biomarker. I'll talk more about that today. Down here, you see how it looks today. The implantation lab, for those that have been in the hospital, is very simple. It's a patient, it's an electrophysiologist, it's a C-arm, and the programmer. That's it. There are no guiding tools for these electrophysiologists. Contrary to an EP lab, which looks like a spaceship, we believe that this is an underserved market. So the company overall perspective is that we want to know and own the implantation lab for these patients. This is a biomarker that we have worked on for roughly a decade. It's quite intuitive, actually. So from you have onset of EKG to maximum pressurize in the left ventricle. That's an indication if that goes down when you pace the heart, the heart will work better with a pacemaker. If that time from onset of QRS to maximum pressurize is increasing, then the heart cannot be resynchronized. So that's a direct and very, very specific and accurate biomarker that we'll use to differentiate these patients. So we have proof of principle data from 40 class 1 indicated patients at the University Hospital in Oslo, Norway. And as you see here, in these 40 patients, even if they are class 1 indicated patients, these patients should really respond to a pacemaker. 6 of the patients were clearly identified as being non-responders long-term with a higher mortality, with a very, very high accuracy. So what we see from our market research is that we need to have a biomarker with a specificity that is higher than 70% or 90%. The current approaches are higher than 70%. So we are financially secured. In total, the company has raised $6 million to get through our first 5 patients in our clinical trial that will commence shortly. On the patent side, we have a total of 5 patent families focusing both on the biomarker and the catheter itself. The competitive landscape is very interesting. It's heating up. For me, it's a validation that this is a really unmet medical need. Medtronic did recently published an EKG belt study in a large randomized clinical trial, 408 patients, and failed miserably, p-value of 0.026. And we believe the reason for that is that you cannot understand the electromechanical activity of the heart by only looking at the electrical or the mechanical activity of the heart. So you need to combine those two, and that's what our biomarker is doing. Workflow-wise, currently, this is really an underserved market. We will, as we think, the most optimal way to treat these patients is to do the measurement directly in the implantation lab. So you will then provide the patients with heparin, get the catheter in the left ventricle, measure the biomarker, reverse heparin when you made the decision of what kind of pacemaker the patient will get. And then if you have a reduction in our biomarker, you will get a classical CRT. If it has a prolongation, the patient has a prolongation, then you can do conduction system pacing, a traditional ICD, or other heart failure treatment options. And at the end, you can then still use the same technology to optimize lead position if you want to. So the overall market looks like this. Today, 200,000 patients treated, 100,000 patients have an effect. What we want to do is to expand this market to 400,000 patients. The team is very solid, most of us based in Oslo, Norway. Hans Henrik has worked on the technology for the last decade. Hans Petter running the financial activity. Per Magne is heading the software team, is the biggest part of the team, 5 people out of the 10, doing a fantastic job on that. Mohammed just finished his PhD in this field and is responsible for the quality system and for the catheter development, and Vegard is running our clinical activity and the signal amplifier development project. We have a solid scientific advisory board. We try to balance it geographically-wise, both in the US and Europe. These are well-known electrophysiologists that have been in the field and done many pivotal clinical trials and interacted with the FDA to get technologies to market. I'm very happy with this team. On the clinical side, we will, in 40 days, enter our first-in-man clinical trial. This is in Class 1 and Class 2 indicated patients. So in a way, it's an all-comer study. So we'll enroll the patients, and all the heart failure patients will get a biventricular pacemaker. So it will be a guideline-selected patient cohort. So they will be standard of care. The only difference is that we'll measure our biomarker at implantation, and we will follow them up to 6 months and look at the ejection fraction or end-systolic volume at 6 months. And then we will basically reproduce the data that you saw in the proof of principle, but we'll get safety and efficacy data from the first-in-man study. When you look at the financing, in total we have raised, as I said, 6 million. The last 2.5 will bring us through the first-in-man clinical trial. And there are 3 pillars in the value creation. Number 1, of course, getting the 6-month follow-up data in up to 50 patients. And that will allow us to complete the study and also prepare for design iterations, both on the catheter and the signal amplifier. And then the next pillar is the 510(k) clearance. So we have already a pre-submission to the FDA. FDA says that this is a 510(k) on the catheter. And that will then move us into the pivotal clinical trial and with a new clinical indication if we want to. So the field, electrophysiology, very active. On the exit side, there have been multiple large exits in this area. If Medtronic bought Affera, Boston Scientific bought Pacertool. It's a field that needs innovation. You see that from the lack of response for these pacemakers. And we think that we have an exit potential that is substantial inside a short time frame. So thank you very much for your attention. Sorry I went a little bit over time, but I would be happy to talk to you afterwards.